For those of you that have been following me over my YouTube career, you know I've been reviewing tech long before I even started writing about video games. Over the years, I just got tired of tech not evolving, and even now it took foldables to really make modern smartphones interesting to me again. I think that's what makes the Playdate so exciting to me. It's not trying to be a competitor to the Switch, consoles, or even the last-gen handhelds. It's simply its own thing that's trying to do something different, and that's thrilling. This is Playdate, the newest handheld from Panic, who co-designed this with Teenage Engineering. You might recall the name Panic. They're the publisher behind the indie darlings Firewatch and Untitled Goose game, with the Playdate now being their first gaming hardware venture. The Playdate is about the width of an iPhone 13, standing at slightly taller than half an iPhone 13. It's tiny compared to any of the modern gaming handhelds on the market. It's this small yellow square that's just adorable to hold. Its minute size makes it easily pocketable, perfect for the whole microgaming market it's targeting. At first glance, this looks like a Game Boy from some other reality, and for the most part, it does feel like a modern take on the Game Boy. You have your D-pad, an A and B button, oh, and a crank. Yeah, that crank is the real eye-turner feature for this device. Upon showing the Playdate to friends and coworkers, they all asked what it was for, and one by one I explained that it's simply just another controller input. Developers don't have to use the crank, but when they do, there's this sense of childhood wonder of playing a game with it for the first time. Something as simple as Brick Breaker became a lot more enthralling just because I was using a crank instead of a D-pad to move around the objects. Speaking of which, the screen. It's a small 400 by 240 resolution 1-bit screen displaying colors in either black or white. If you've ever seen a Kindle before, it has a similar feeling to it, but with a much more fluid animation. Here's the catch, there's no backlight screen on this device. So those days of trying to have a light over the device when it's dark isn't a thing of the past for the Playdate. Unlike most modern devices though, the Playdate works great in direct sunlight because it has that e-ink-like display. In terms of build quality, this thing feels premium. I know I keep saying how cute and charming it is, but it really does feel like a premium product. The device has this cool touch to it alongside a matte yellow finish that feels comfy to hold. At the bottom of the device is a headphone jack, speaker, and a USB-C port for charging and sideloading games from a computer. At the top is a sleep button that's right next to the menu button. From here you can access the volume options, the Playdate's home menu, and other settings depending on the active game. If you thought the hardware was diverging from the beaten path, wait until you see the software. The Playdate doesn't have a traditional storefront. You don't open up the Playdate store and then buy games from there. Instead, the games are released in seasons with 2 coming out per week for a total of 12 weeks. You get free access to Season 1 with the order of your Playdate, but it hasn't been confirmed if other seasons are on the way. For now, when you first turn on your Playdate, you'll get 2 games every week. And if you did your math correctly, you'll know that's a total of 24 games that Panic has curated from a handful of different developers, including the creators of Katamari and Quap. Since these games come out on a weekly basis, I haven't had the chance to play all of them outside of the first 4, and a handful that I bought from itch.io. So far the library is fine, but nothing has really stood out to me that makes me want to say you have to go buy a Playdate right now. Kraken's time travel adventure feels like a platformer puzzle game. You play as a robot named Kraken that's late for an important date. The concept is that you use the crank to control time, thus helping avoid any obstacles Kraken might run into on his commute. It's a fun game that fully leans into the novelty of the Playdate's crank. Casual Birder is another favorite of mine. It's sort of a Pokemon Snap-like game, but with birds. You go around a small town with different photography objectives revolving around birds. Using the crank, you change the aperture of the camera to get the bird in focus. It's incredibly charming with some cheesy writing, making the whole experience a delight to play. I sideloaded a few games too, which was a seamless process. Adding games to the Playdate is as easy as dragging and dropping them onto the computer, or just uploading the project files to the Playdate website and then wirelessly syncing them to the Playdate. I bought this $10 game called Bloom. It's a social sim where you run a flower shop while tending to your own garden. This feels like one of the more robust experiences thus far, and is an example of where developers can take the handheld. There's also plenty of free games you can sideload, like a version of Tetris and Airball, a Playdate-styled brick breaker. At its $179 price tag, not including the additional accessories should you want to buy a dock or so on, the Playdate is no cheap investment. However, I would never argue that it's not a fun one. Playdate is cute, adorable, charming, and even a bit pretentious. It's literally a modern-day micro-game machine that feels like it's from Spike Jonze's Her movie. On the consumer side, it's an expensive novelty that even if you did buy one right now, you probably wouldn't get it for a while, as the shipping delays have made pre-orders go back as late as 2023. On the developer side, it's a fascinating device that's been fun to tinker with. I've been messing around with game development on it, writing my projects in C, but you can also write your game in Lua. There's even an easy to figure out game dev tool called Pulp that lets you design a game within your web browser. It's inviting and entertaining to learn. In those aspects, even somewhat on the consumer end, it's fun to own this because it's simply an exciting novelty project in gaming that feels like a gateway drug into game dev, while also harkening back to a simpler time in gaming. It's not a device for everyone, especially if you're strapped on cash, but one that's been a delight to own as someone that loves microgames and has always had an interest in game development.